My first question is around you talking about men chasing excellence and being the best versions of themselves. Um, but in that pursuit, obviously we face mental health challenges. I think just about everybody, nobody's on a swift linear path to success, right? There's
Mm.
challenges that you face, and some people face more challenges than others. And I wanted to know, firstly, your take on mental health and how do men overcome mental health challenges on their pursuit to happiness and success?
Yeah. So on that path to happiness and success and doing all that work, there's going to be a lot more failures than there will be wins. So I think framing it correctly and making sure it's understood, so that that guy that wants to go and, let's say, start up a business and put a little dent in the universe understands that there are going to be way more failures than there are successes. Reading biographies from successful entrepreneurs, I would recommend that, as a starting place, so you understand all the failures that got in the way of the success. Everybody sees somebody that's successful and they say, oh, he's an overnight success or something like that. But the truth of the matter is, every overnight success I know took usually about a decade of work. And within that decade, failure after failure, pivot after pivot. I think a lot of young men today have this preconceived notion that it's a linear line, but it's very squiggly and it goes all over the place. And sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. And dealing with rejection is a skill that you need to get good at. Being a strategist is a skill that you need to be good at. So, learning those skills young and making sure that you infuse them into the fabric of your being will get you there sooner than you think.
Why do you think it is that maybe it's just a perception or maybe it's coming out? It's difficult to say, right? But why do you think that younger men and the newer generations tend to face more mental health challenges than were in older generations?
Well, we've become a society of weaker, softer men, haven't we? Um, the generation that my dad grew up in and my granddad grew up in was tough. There were boundaries, there was disciplines, there was spanking still, at that time. We're now raising a generation of entitled, soft men. I call this phenomenon the pussification of the West, if we can use that term, because essentially you have weaker, softer men with lower testosterone than they did several decades ago. It's a combination of nurture and nature. Society and culture uh, softens men to the extent that we've all, not all, but 70% of the population essentially fell for a scamdemic a few years ago. We stood on dots, we wore face diapers, we took experimental jabs thinking that we needed to do all these things to save the planet. When in reality and in hindsight, when all the data was released and the evidence was presented, it was no more dangerous than the common cold.
I think just sticking on that topic of mental health, firstly, right? I think from my understanding, what I believe it is the society has drastically changed. Okay, the vast majority of society now, you don't see many people going out to bars and clubs as you used to. You don't see people out as much as you used to, and the reason is because everybody's on these little devices, right? And in
Mm,
this interactive world, and that's increasing as time goes on. So that's one aspect of it, and I think we have this delusion of what we think, other people's lives are,
mm,
and then we reflect that on ourselves. So I think that's one aspect of it. But I think another aspect is we have a lot more free time on our hands now, and I think back in the olden days, people were working a lot harder. They were more into their purpose and their mission, and because they didn't have a choice. Like you had a family to feed, and if you go back a bit more further down the generations, if you had to go down the road and go get a bucket of water to bring that back, I mean, the last thing that's going to be on your mind is things reminiscing in your brain about a woman or whatever it is that's on your mind. So I think essentially we mental health is something that we not all the time, because there can be physical issues as well, with regards to the levels of chemicals that we have in our body and the hormones that everybody's different, but barring that, I do think we get in our own way a lot nowadays. And I think that some of the issues that face younger men is one, obviously you discussed there about lower testosterone levels, and I have found that not just myself but people around me and everybody I've spoken to, if I'm not training, if I fall off my routine in the gym, I will automatically start to feel down, and
mm.
I'll start to not feel that same rigor and that same energetic I won't be my energetic self anymore, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of different attack vectors that are softening men. Social media is just example of one of hundreds. You know, somebody's social media feed on Instagram is a highlight reel of their best moments in life. I've said this many times because you see parents, especially moms on Facebook, do this where they'll post the most perfect picture of their children. Look at my two angels. But they'll never post the picture of Billy and Nancy beating the living crap out of each other in the back seat, where Billy smashes his ice cream cone over his sister's head. That never gets shared. But that's the reality of about probably 90% of her life. There's only very short moments that you see shared on social media that are absolutely perfect or look perfect. And a lot of the times they're not perfect and they have to touch them up with Photoshop or something like that, or a filter. So you have to understand that these things aren't real. They have been presented to you as real, but they're manipulated truths. And the world is a lot harder and tougher than what you think it is. Like I said, older generations had it harder. Like kids today don't have chores. They don't have to cut the lawn. Parents will hire lawn care companies. I remember pushing around the lawnmower when I was about 7 or 8 years old, right? Like this is things that you don't see children do anymore because mom or dad don't want to force them to do it. Or if mom or dad are divorced, they don't want to be the one that this the bad parent, because then they'll run to the other parent and make a big fuss about it. So there's a lot of things happening out there. Like I said, there's a lot of different attack vectors that are softening men. We could spend hours discussing them all, but it's a reality of today's world, right?
100%. You just brought back some memories with the lawnmower. I remember having to take that lawnmower around and the wire getting chopped and my dad really disciplining me, but we
Yeah.
don't get that anymore, right?
Yeah. You
And
don't
that's how
hear
you
about
learn.
that today anymore.
No, that's how you learn. But I never understood when I was young about doing the small things. I've got an elder brother, and my eldest brother would always, he'd take me to the boxing gym. He would whoop my butt. He would teach me how to assemble things. And
Mhm.
it's not until later years in my life that I started to see the value of these things. Going to the gym, learning how to train. I took it for granted. I thought I wasted a lot of time early on learning how to train, how to exercise, being involved in boxing, so on and so forth. But in later life, you start to see the valuable lessons.
Yeah, I think combat, sex, and hunting are probably the three most natural things. And I don't use the word feeling that often when I talk. I use thinking when I discuss topics. But I think as a man, when it comes to sex, hunting, and fighting, those three things feel very, very natural. It's infused in the fabric of our DNA. And combat is something that's been taken away from us. Even in Boy Scouts, like when I was a kid, we used to play this game, British Bulldog, where, essentially you'd line up on each end of the field and you just charge and ram the crap out of each other, sort of thing. They don't allow that anymore because children will be hurt. They're afraid of what the lawyers will do. I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full-length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.